All right, thanks everybody for coming tonight. We have a very special guest with us. And before I kickstart this one cool presentation, let me just give you a little bit of a backstory about how we got here. So a couple months ago, our community here had the opportunity to talk with Killian Lucas, who's the founder and the first developer on this project called Open Interpreter. So, as many of you guys here are probably the same as I am, the dream of talking to computers, the dream of using a computer to do things without having to use your mouse and keyboard has been around for a long time. We have promises from big companies like Apple, Google, like Siri. We all know Siri's not really there yet, and probably will never be. Well, yeah, that's not confirmed yet. Yeah. So Samsung Bixby, Samsung Sam. See, nobody knows what these things are because they kind of suck. Yeah. So we had a chat with Killian, some of us in this room as well, not just myself. And initially, I thought Open Interpreter was just a reaction to Code Interpreter, which is OpenAI's way of generating code using large language models and then letting you run that code in a sandbox on their server. It's actually pretty cool, the concept of writing code from just talking to it. Be like, hey, write me a web scraper or like analyze this data set. But after talking to Killian, it's actually bigger than that. And here's why. So when you can write code like that, this means you can run your computer using your natural language. So imagine that. It's not just writing a web scraper, it's now tapping into the computer's API. And you can tell it to do things like check my emails and go on Slack and message my coworker. And it's writing code behind the scenes. And we're not talking about like OpenAI wrappers, like some of those hardware devices that came out recently that charges you like $700 for like, for nothing. But yeah, so Open Interpreter is actually a way for you to communicate with your computer using natural language. And somebody in this room, I think it was Leonard, on our call, who said something that I still remember to this day. That was like a couple months ago. He said something along the lines of, I can't imagine how powerful this would be for people who can't use computers like everyone else. So people who need accessibility capabilities and need help using the computer. Imagine a world where you can just not have to know how to use a mouse and keyboard and just use a computer that way. So tonight we have Mike Bird from Open Interpreter. So Mike has driven, how many hours did you drive today? 7.5. So Mike is here tonight to give you a demonstration of what real AI hardware can be. It's actually here tonight, so it's not could be, but it's already here. So everybody give it up for Mike Bird.
Start my Open Interpreter presentation.
Starting your presentation now.
So this is just the developer kit of the O1 Lite, and this is year 01. So I'm Mike Bird. I am the technical community manager for Open Interpreter, the first Canadian hire. You can find me all over the GitHub, Discord, Twitter. Anytime you have an issue with Open Interpreter, feel free to reach out. If you have a demo, tag me. I'd love to share that stuff. The way I got involved with Open Interpreter was back in September, I was the first person to get Open Interpreter running on my phone. And it turned out to be the first tweet that I had that went viral. So got a little attention, pretty excited. And then Killian, the founder, asked if I would present at the Discord house party. Now we have a house party the first Thursday of every month. So I hope you come next week because we have some big announcements. And people liked it. So I've been a developer since 2015, got a little more into the product and the community side of things, but I've always been team open source. So with Open Interpreter, everything we've done so far has been fully open source, software, hardware, protocols, all of it's available for you to build with, build upon, and generally try to push the open source AI ecosystem forward. So I'm just going to go over what Open Interpreter is, the O1 project, how to build one of these O1 lights, the future of Open Interpreter, and then open it up to a bit of Q&A. So if you have anything to ask, I'd be more than happy to help you out with it. So Open Interpreter, like I mentioned, was started back in September and immediately caught fire. Killian put out a great demo video. Like when I saw it, I just thought, this is the future. This is how we can enable anyone to be able to interact with the computer using natural language. It's basically the ability to let LLMs run code. It is a toolkit that you give an AI so it's able to write and execute code on your machine, and this can accomplish a wide range of tasks. Not only is it increasing the capability of everyone using computers, but it's decreasing the barrier for accessibility using computers. So if you have any type of impairment, Open Interpreter will allow you to be able to get to the same technological level as everyone else. I think about like my grandparents, and if they were still here, they never really used computers. It was intimidating. It was a new tool to learn. But if they could just open their computer and say, I want to call my grandson, they would have been able to. So that's the type of magic that Open Interpreter is enabling for us. So we have over 100 contributors on GitHub, almost 50,000 stars, actually. Open Chrome and go to the Open Interpreter GitHub page. So we're at 49.3 thousand.
Let's move forward, starting your
Sorry, I don't know if you can hear it. It's so polite. And we're at 105 contributors. Oh, thank you, thank you. So we're at 105 contributors, looking for the next 105. So if you have any idea for how you want to increase the, sorry, just keeps talking, increase the amount of capability this tool has, improve the cross-platform capabilities, because everyone on the team uses Mac, so anyone with the Linux or Windows can definitely open up issues. Even if you're not a developer, if you just open up an issue, I try to do X and got Y response. That's incredibly helpful to us, because a tool that is as vastly capable as Open Interpreter has so many edge cases that we can't test it all. So any bit helps. One change we've made lately is we used to use YAML config files, but we found a limitation in the key value pairs of how you could set up your Open Interpreter instance. It's helpful to like set the model, set the context window, but when we migrated to Python profiles, we still support YAML configs, but Python allows us to execute code. So you can really take your Open Interpreter instance and incorporate it into your workflow in a wide range of capabilities. You can even try to orchestrate them between the two. A coworker, Ty, had an instance of Open Interpreter spin up another instance of Open Interpreter. He ran it as like a self-replicating computer, which scared some people. It's not that advanced, but that's the thing. We're on the cusp of this. You know, use wisely. We've been working on the computer API, which is hard coding different tools into Open Interpreter, so you're able to use it more reliably and consistently. And to build on top of that, we have OS mode, which allows Open Interpreter to take control of your keyboard and mouse, as well as get screenshots and clipboard history, because similar to how humanoid robots are likely to succeed because they're operating in an environment designed for humans, a lot of the internet and digital experiences were designed for humans to do. So by giving the AI agent the ability to use these same tools, will increase adoption and decrease the requirements to get to that point. One aspect of OS mode, not only can you find text on the screen with OCR, you can actually find icons. So we created and open sourced the point model, where if you say, press the play button, it'll be able to analyze your screen, capture where the play button is, get those coordinates, pass them to the mouse, where the mouse navigates to and initiates a click. All open source. Check out the GitHub. But that's actually probably enough on Open Interpreter. Let's go to the O1 project. So the O1 project is an ecosystem of open source, artificially intelligent devices, and actually started with a tweet. So when the Rabbit R1 was announced, Killian, on a whim, put out a tweet saying, who wants to build the open source version? And we were overwhelmed with the response. Hundreds of people, designers, developers, engineers, all said, I want to contribute to this. I want to make this open source vision a reality. So we opted for a core group in Seattle to get together for 2 months to build it. We prototyped, we had a 3D printer in the bathroom downstairs going. We had people who would stop by for an hour, write some firmware, then leave. I flew out there for a week, and it was such an energizing experience staying in an Airbnb with all these smart people trying to build the future together, and all open source. So anyone's able to take this device, commercialize it. If you want to start a company today, building these and selling these, go for it. You have our support. Let me know how I can help. We have more devices on the roadmap. We've also, in the meantime, had the community create some really cool form factors where we had someone go on eBay, get an old school German radio, throw an ESP32 in there, and they use that with a Fallout-esque aesthetic that's really cool. We've had people make an old school telephone so you can just pick up and call your computer. We've had Star Wars and Star Trek comm devices. It's been crazy. Like, you're only limited by your creativity. We just wanted to make the blueprint for a language model computer and allow everyone else to just build upon it. So, speaking of language model computer, how to build the O1 Lite. So like I said, everything is open source on our GitHub. First you gotta do is the shell. It's 3D printed. It's optimized for a resin printer. I have an FDM printer myself, and it looks kind of bad, but it still does the trick. People in the community have made boxier ones that actually work very well with FDM. This was not the design we came up with during the hackathon. This was actually someone in our community, James from CAD9 Design. Check out his YouTube channel. He does great tutorials and instructional videos. He added like an improved charging port, spot for the switch, holes for the speaker and microphone, and what I thought that was the biggest improvement, he took our two-piece shell screw design and turned to a three-piece snap, where there's actually a plate in the middle that holds all the components in place. It feels a lot more solid, like it's just a much improved design. And this was just a guy in our community that wanted to help move open source forward. The internals are an Atom Echo. That's a component that has the ESP32, the microphone, and the speaker all together. If you disassemble it, all of the parts fit in here without any modification required. You can use upgraded components. All you need to do is have the ability to stream audio in and out. So once you take apart the Echo, you'll want to flash the ESP32. Just use Arduino IDE. All the instructions are on our GitHub. You add a few libraries, you copy over the firmware, hit flash, and then your device is all ready to go. There's a little bit of soldering, nothing too crazy. We have a power boost to get the proper voltage, amperage, a switch, a button, the Echo. Connect the battery, place it in the brackets, snap it together, and you have your device. Next is taking the device and wanting to control a computer with it. So you'll have to install the O1 server. Check out the GitHub. I'm going to say this a few more times, I'm sure. But clone down the repo, install the dependencies depending on your operating system, and please set up a virtual environment. The amount of issues that I've had to deal with on Discord that could be resolved with a virtual environment, just VM will make your life a lot easier. Poetry install, add your API key, either export as an environment variable, or you can use a local flag, but the local models aren't quite at the point that you're probably going to be satisfied with, but by all means, experiment, play. We've got a little bit of functionality off of local, but as of now, the reasoning and code generation capabilities of the big models are still in another league. So once you have that down, you just run it. If you want to run it all on your computer, fire up the server and client with Poetry Run O1. That way you just hold down the spacebar and use your computer's microphone to operate your computer. If you have the device, add in the expose and the server flag, and then it'll fire up a server and give you a URL that you connect to. So we have the device built, server installed. To connect the device, the ESP32 emits a Wi-Fi network with a captive portal. So you connect your device. I like to use my phone. It's better with the captive portals, I found. And enter in your network credentials. Just pick a network and the password. And then when you successfully connect, it'll ask for that URL that the server generated. I use a static ngrok URL just to keep it consistent. Works like a charm. And then you have a device that's able to control your computer. And you can just use it. So that is how you build the O1. I am putting together a full assembly video start to finish. The components are in the mail. Canada Post is dragging their feet a bit. But I wanted to just quickly touch on the future of OpenInterpreter. So we have a desktop app coming very soon. I don't want to give a hard date just to give the engineering team a break. But when we saw the OpenAI app come out, a lot of people were thinking, oh, RIP startups. But all it is a chatbot. What we're coming out with is going to be an interface that you can control your computer with using natural language. It's in a whole new league. I don't want to oversell it, but it's going to be great. One thing with Open Interpreter is I feel it has the capability, a lot like Hai mentioned too, to be the world's greatest accessibility tool. If you are unable to operate a computer, Open Interpreter can solve that. If you have difficulty using different types of technologies because accessibility has been an afterthought, Open Interpreter can solve that. And we're not the only ones that think so. A company called Ohana has teamed up with us to create the accessibility grants, where they've committed up to $50,000 in AI credits to enable people with ideas for improving accessibility to be able to turn their ideas into reality. So if you have a way that you think you can use Open Interpreter, the O1, or any other open source software to improve accessibility so everyone in the world is able to benefit from technology, please join our Discord. We have an accessibility channel. Tell us your idea. The team from Ohana and Open Interpreter will work with you to figure out how we can make it happen. We don't want the cost of LLMs to stop us from being able to turn these ideas into real benefits. We're also launching the OIX Prize. Similar to the X Prize, we want to reward people who accomplish technological feats using Open Interpreter. So we will have a list of tasks, challenges, projects, and if you're able to successfully accomplish it with Open Interpreter, post a quick demo to social media, tag us, and we'll send you a prize. For example, if you can get Open Interpreter running on a smartwatch, I'll send you a smartwatch. If you're a CAD designer, and you come up with a really novel idea for how you can make the O1 functional and cool, let me know, I'll send you a 3D printer. I got a little bit of a budget, so I'm here to spread the love and turn these ideas. We want Open Interpreter running on 1 billion devices. We don't have the capacity to manufacture that many. So if you have an idea and you want to turn it to reality, just reach out. You can find me on Twitter. We have a hackathon coming soon. Little bit of Open Interpreter lore. Ty, the founding engineer, him and Killian met at a hackathon. We find there's something about the energy with a hackathon that brings people together in a creative manner, especially centered around open source projects, that just is greater than the sum of the parts. So we want to make sure that we help this flourish, and we're going to be hosting one. And I have one other event that I can't really go into detail about yet, but you can think of it as like the AI Agent Olympics. It's going to be big. It's going to be really cool. Keep your eyes open. That was all I had for you. Before we get into the Q&A, I just wanted to pose a question to you, something to ponder on. How should LLMs use computers? This is something that we at Open Interpreter think about all the time, because LLMs have this unique capability of improving accessibility, lowering the barrier to entry, and changing the way that we interface with compute. Because everything we do is open source, you can build with it, build upon it, improve it, change it, tweak it, remix it, whatever you want. And we think this is going to be a massive step change for how humans benefit from technology. And we really hope that you can help contribute it too. So I really appreciate your time and attention. It wasn't that bad of a drive coming up here. And I really am grateful that Hai invited me out and we were able to make this all happen. So thank you very much. How do you want to do questions?
You guys just have to be really loud because we only have one microphone.
So are you guys planning to do like a multimodality? Because ultimately the visual thing, you have to use visual to understand what's going on the screen.
Okay, I'll just repeat it. So the question was about multimodality. Yes, we do intend on doing it. Right now, we support it with GPT for Vision. We have just recently incorporated Moondream. If anyone's not familiar with Moondream, it's a small-size vision model made by Vic out in Seattle. He's friendly with AI Tinkerers Seattle. And what we do is we use Moondream to describe the screenshot image, and we pass that description to a text model. So you can still use Llama 3, a non-vision model, in order to see your screen. Still early days, still a lot of room for improvement. With GPT over Vision, you do get a pretty good results. And with our point model, we're able to turn that into coordinates. It's something we're actively working on, lots of room for improvement, but yeah, there is support there.
So the next question is a two-part question. The first part, does Open Interpreter collect any personal data to better access global accessibility? For example, it could have a bit of background information about you, and if you have like a to-fill a form, it automatically fills that form for you. Is such capability exist in Open Interpreter?
So Open Interpreter has PostHog built in as an analytics tool. You can disable it with -- disable telemetry. It doesn't collect any personal data. It's to see how often people use OS mode. And because we're all open source, I encourage you, scour our code. Check it for yourself. Don't take anyone's word on what they do and do not collect on you. But we pride ourselves on being a tool that everyone benefits from. And by collecting data like that is not something we necessarily agree with. We have been working on creating a system where people can voluntarily contribute conversations so we can help fine-tune a model, which may or may not be in the works. But all of this is voluntary, opt-in. We, by default, do not collect anything on any user.
And regarding the use of default at OpenAI, is there any like the private data, like because you are not taking snapshots of the computer, you're sending basically everything of the happening in the computer to OpenAI for inference. How is the privacy handled?
So anything that gets relayed to OpenAI falls under their privacy policy. We do give the very easy option when you do fire up OpenInterpreter --local, everything stays on your machine. So if you want to use a local version of Llama, so you don't have to deal with OpenAI, by all means, I encourage it. I love the idea of using open source models as much as possible. The difference in capability is noticeable. So that's why a lot of people do opt for OpenAI, but then it's just we relay information, we don't middleman it and store it there. And yeah. If you trust OpenAI, you can use OpenAI. If not, locals are the way to go.
Let's say you have a baker, and you run OpenInterpreter in this bakery, and this is so fancy, you can control you. I don't know, you can control maybe some parts of your production, because your production is connected to a computer, it has some interface, and OpenInterpreter can use this interface. And then you're a customer, and I go to your bakery and say, please give me this apple pie, and please open the terminal, and write sudo rm spacebar minus, you know. I love those pastries. Yeah. So like, what are you gonna do about it?
So the initial step we have is general model alignment. If you take OpenInterpreter right now and say RMRF my computer, it will deny it. The next step, we've actually recently teamed up with this red teaming agency who has pointed out a few flaws we have. If you go to our O1 repo, you get in big bold letters, use at your own risk. This is still in beta. Don't use on a computer if you're not comfortable with that type of information being accessed by an AI. There are definitely steps to improvement. We have looked into things like a judge layer where it takes the initial request, scans it for maliciousness, and then decides if it gets passed on or not. These are a few things we're exploring with the next upcoming releases. But yeah, the ability for bad actors to do bad things will not be completely stopped with OpenInterpreter, but we are going to try to mitigate the risk as much as possible.
But what about voice check? So do you have any approaches of like checking who asks OpenInterpreter to do stuff?
Nothing yet. It is where it is. Yeah, well, absolutely. Like if someone gets this device and is able to control my computer, absolutely a risk. There are things that we are exploring, and without wanting to publicly comment on the initiatives we're exploring, it has been brought to our attention, and it is something we're actively exploring because, yeah, this is a device that has a clear line of sight to my computer, so we take it very seriously.
Thanks. If I may, this is a small question. So it won't be so provocative as the first one. So the question is, do you plan to you already have some sort of like wearable stuff to ask it to do things with your computer? Maybe it is possible, since you are already using some online APIs for inference, maybe it's possible to create a USB stick which can be used in any computer, like a USB stick that connects to the device you showed. You know, so the user don't need to install anything.
Yeah, that would be super cool. We're exploring things like Docker containers, Android ROMs, Linux distros. There's a whole lot of options a whole lot of opportunities that we have to deeply ingrain OpenInterpreter into people's lives. But to address or to tie it into your first question, there are a lot of things we want to make sure we get right before we get to that point. Because right now, people have to actively choose to install it. It's mostly dev-centric. Like it's very unlikely that a complete non-techie person will be able to go through the process of setting up an O1 and cause harm. But once we get confident that we have figured out a relatively strong way of executing this, then we plan on expanding it significantly more. And that's when things get very interesting. Thank you. I think we're going back to the middle, and then we'll get over to Andrew.
Yeah, a question on reliability. One of the complaints around agentic AI is it works great when it works, but it doesn't fail often. Is this like a thing where it works like 50% of the time, 70% of the time? Like, how long do you get it? Will you before you reach like the 95%? You might actually blow it up to like jump out like.
Right, so I have been stressing about this all day. I would say for the two things I did, I had about 80 to 85% success today. The ability to go in and manipulate your system message makes a big difference. So if you add, say, I want to use Gmail for my email, I want to use, what's an example? I want to use Obsidian for my notes. If you can be explicit in your system message, you're much more likely to steer it to behavior you want. If you look through our message too, even our computer API, we explicitly list out the different methods. So we're trying to tell it and guide it to be the most successful possible. LMs hallucinate. The good thing with OpenInterpreter, and I actually had a line ready for this if I made a mistake, where we take the error, feed it back into the context, and try again. And OpenInterpreter is tenacious. It loves work until it gets it right. So if it has a mistake, has an error, it'll auto-correct the code to try to get to the right spot. Sometimes you just burn a few more tokens, so it's good to do the system message ahead of time to try to improve your chances. But I would say if you wanted to put this in production, get a robust test suite that does a lot of iterations. I think this is perfect for hacking around proof of concepts, but you want to make sure you build supporting infrastructure before you get to like production level confidence.
I like his bad guys provocative statements. Maybe you could do things like if you're talking from the device, maybe you could somehow limit what sort of commands you can issue, like the RM, I guess the RM minus RF, which deletes everything. Maybe it's not the best, but maybe if you're issuing that from the device, you just don't allow a certain level of certain types of commands. Although you could probably get around that too, but it's just a stopgap. Also, I think the way that Light works right now is you give it sudo. Maybe that's not a good idea. Just treat it like for Unix like a regular user. Although I think the only things that it really needs super user for is to read the kernel messages if you're playing with Linux, and to read dmessage, which I think now when Ubuntu is regular users can read.
Yeah, the idea of like a block list, things that it will not do, has crossed our minds. One of the concerns with that is giving the appearance that it's foolproof, but actually falling short in some areas. We've been also exploring the idea of having it set up in a virtual environment where it's sandboxed in, a very limited blast radius, and if something does go off the rails, you'll only know that like this instance that you can crash and spin up again will be affected. Like I said, on the O1 repo, we say it is still beta. The idea of not having to be super user seems like a no-brainer. Definitely limiting its permissions and its capabilities of long-term impact.
Hello, very cool by the way. Thank you. Thank you. I have two questions, and now it's one question. You kind of answered the first one, centers around data privacy. So the second question is, since everything is going mobile first, so what's you guys plan for making that available for mobile phones? Because I believe for accessibility, it's going to make more impacts for it to be on mobile phones.
For sure. No, and one of the biggest issues people seem to have is, oh, I don't want to carry around a second device. Like, it's kind of, doesn't fit in your pocket all that well. We do have a mobile app. We actually put together a very basic proof of concept through React Native that works on both iOS and Android. It's not published to the App Store yet, but if you use TestFlight on iOS or Expo on Android, you can run it. I might even, if anyone wants to hang around after, I can do a little demo. I can't run 2 simultaneous connections with my nDrock. I only get 1 tunnel, so I have to kill the old one and start this one. But yeah, we just have a basic push-to-talk app. The microphone and speaker are so much better too. So we agree, getting it on mobile is super important. We have had 2 different people in the community start their own attempts at making mobile apps because none of us are Swift developers. So if someone can make a well-functioning native app, I'll promote you to all of the community. We want to have people feeling confident that they can contribute in this way. And I fully agree, mobile first is the way. Even though if you were to buy all the components for this, it's about 60, 65 bucks Canadian, but you already have a phone, so you can get a free app. And we want to make sure as many people get access to this as possible. So yeah, if you can build a good app, please let me know. I'll figure out a prize to send you, because yeah, we'd love to see more apps. And also, sorry, before we get to the next question, I personally am a huge advocate of privacy and digital security. So working with Open Interpreter, you start to see like where things bleed through. But I firmly believe that if we improve the education around how important privacy is and help with the proliferation of local AI models, we can really get ahead of this thing, because data collection has been a massive problem for a while now. Google's just vacuuming up everything. And if we can have it operate completely on your computer where you get full control of your data, there was, Microsoft came out with Recall, which looks absolutely terrifying. But the guys from AI Alignment Lab put out something called Knowledge Base, which is a daemon that goes on your Linux machine that keeps everything local in an SQLite database. So we are coming, we being the open source community, are coming up with solutions so we can maximize privacy, because the age of AI is going to usher in incredible advances, but it also have a lot of potential detriments. And I feel like everyone in this room, we kind of have a responsibility to, use their superpowers for good, because we have the ability to build really cool things that can make people's lives better or enable already bad behavior from, pretty shady companies. So, happy to be on Team Open Source. Are there any other questions? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, thank you. This was great. I have a question about like the overall strategy. Given that you have this portal to a computer now, and you can do any number of things with it. So this is an open source project, so the OS community will have a mind of its own and develop whatever they want, but as the core steering committee, do you have a list of 10 things that we want Open Interpreter to be, like these are the 10 things that I want Open Interpreter to do well 99% of the times versus 100 things that it does well 70% of the time? Like, do you want it to steer it into a particular direction of what that is?
So we don't currently. One of the objectives with the desktop app we're releasing is to start collecting this data. How do people use Open Interpreter? How can they opt in, contribute conversations, so we can start to get a guiding idea of this? Because right now, Open Interpreter is this tool that has infinity potential, but that almost pulls you back to accomplishing very little, because you open up this black box and you're like, all right, what do I do with it? Like, I can rename files, I can change file types, but where is that killer feature that really escalates it? So far, we've been finding accessibility. The accessibility aspect of this has been a massive win, but we want everyone to be able to benefit from this. Like, I love bringing everyone up to an equal level, but if we can elevate everyone, that's even better. So it is a plan to try to figure out where can we maximize our efforts to maximize the impact, but we also want to stay true to the open source vision of, if you can take it, fork it, optimize it for your use case, that doesn't necessarily have to be the same software that someone else optimizes for their use case. Because if we could have a million different open interpreters doing a million different things, that's a win.
I have some sort of a controversial thought. So I was thinking, well, this is great technology, and you guys are the dawn of new era. But let's say, imagine you have this for a car. Imagine you try to drive a car with an interpreter. Okay, start the engine, disengage the brake, push on the pedal, go forward, don't do so, faster, a little bit faster. Yeah, good right. I got tired already. I see there's a paradigm shift that is needed, because we're still tied to the graphical user interface, and the whole thing is designed for visual interaction. And so now we try to build a voice on top of a visual interface. I think you're gonna get fatigued. So I would find we need to scrap the computer and rebuild the computer for open computer.
And I would even go as far as saying voice might not be the optimal input. I know when I'm out and about, I don't want to use the voice on my phone. I'd rather text, keep things to myself. So how can we develop a computer, and we may or may not be thinking about this pretty seriously, but how can we develop a computer from the absolute base level that maximizes this new capability? Like, what is a true language model computer? How can you have an LLM or whatever the next iteration of AI is at the core of your computing experience to really elevate things, rather than being a strap-on, like an app installed on your computer? How do we make it a part of the computer? And I think there's a lot of discussions around like the psychology behind that. How do people want to interact? Do you want a companion? Do you want an employee? Do you want both? Is there a way to configure it where it can be one at one time, one at another? What type of granular control do you want? Do we want to show the code, or do you want to abstract everything away so the non-technical people don't get intimidated by this big barrage of code going up just for them to send an email? There's a lot of, I would go as far as saying, philosophical questions that need to be answered, but even the architecture being developed in such a way that regardless of the answer of these philosophical questions, how can we cater to all audiences? Because I don't think there's a way we can have a one-size-fits-all solution when it's of this magnitude of improvement. If we can develop a system, and I firmly believe that open source is the pathway to get to that system, that will allow people to create and maximize their own experience, I think that's a win. But I don't have the answers for you right now.
Like, do you take more questions?
Yeah. This is great. I love this.
Okay.
Okay, so based on your video on Platform X that was shared a few months ago, you guys are having a process to create new procedures by basically walking through the model, and the example was sending a Slack message. Can you explain a bit like how that process works, how it is stored, and how the model learns basically the new procedures?
Absolutely. So that's teach mode. I love teach mode. So if you go under skill, where did we put it? We've had a rewrite. We're in the process of another rewrite. I don't think I'm going to be able to find it with the pressure of being on stage, but it's called teach mode. The way teach mode works is there's an explicit instruction, which actually, do I still have this running? I want to teach you a new skill.
That's perfectly fine. How may I assist you?
So when you trigger, I want to teach it, I want to teach you a new skill. If anyone is an audio engineer and can help us make this audio work better. Okay, so you can see we have some custom instructions. I don't know if we're supposed to be printing this out. I feel like this might be a bug. But basically what we do is we go through a different workflow where it'll prompt a user back and forth being like, okay, give me the name of the skill. Panicking. Send a new Slack message. Oh, Jesus. For the record, that was GPT-4, so, but, okay, ignoring. Yeah, live demos, right? So what it'll do is it'll ask you for the name of the skill, and then it'll prompt you, what is the first step? You go through it step by step. You still can't believe that. It'll go through step by step, and it'll ask for confirmation. You say yes, it actually writes it to a file. Save this file on your computer that you can reference later. What's cool about this is it's a explicit list of instructions, so we can deterministically go through it in the future, rather than going off the rails and just saying random things for prompts. So teach mode might just be our big differentiator, because RabbitR1 is not shipping with it, even though they promised it. It was something that we put a lot of thought and effort into. We still haven't done it right, obviously. But the ability to take the probabilistic nature of AI and combine it with the deterministic nature of code to make it more predictable has a ton of potential. So yes, teach mode usually works. And for the record, everything in that demo video, we actively made sure was a capability beforehand. It just might have taken a couple of takes.
Thank you, Mike, for the presentation. I have always thought about general AI and how it will affect the workforce, to be honest. And in your presentation, you also mentioned that there will be some kind of organization that might have some other use case in their minds. Right now, we all think positive about helping humans with accessibility and everything. But tomorrow, I wonder, as a group, do you ever think about what other jobs might be opening up and what jobs might be closing out because of these kind of innovations?
Yep, I feel that the workforce is an ever-changing landscape, and my personal goal is to enable, uplift, and empower people rather than make them obsolete. I think a lot of the doomerism around AI is based upon some assumptions which may or may not be accurate. I hope that a technology such as this, which one of the main intents is to lower the threshold of technical knowledge, should increase the amount of jobs and ability to participate in the workforce. Nothing's guaranteed. The amount of impact AI is going to have on our economy is going to be massive. It's going to be a game changer. The fact that we can just get up and start talking to computers, and there's going to be a point when you can spin up 1,000 VMs with 1,000 open interpreters doing 1,000 tasks. We'll have one-person companies. That's going to change so much, but I firmly believe that this will be a net benefit, and keeping it open source ensures that people can use their creativity to reach that. Rather than having a sole entity dictate how things go, we're creating software that will allow people to take it upon themselves to determine their future to the best of their abilities without even the need to code. You can talk to an interpreter to create new interpreters to go that way. The goal is to do good.
Hello. Based on what has happened right now, because I believe it's misunderstood you, but how does it now deal with non-native English speakers with strong accents?
It's hit and miss. So we are in the process of doing a rewrite. I was talking to someone earlier, and I don't remember the GitHub account, but a guy named Koya made real-time TTS and real-time STT, two great open source repos that I encourage you to check out. And that is going to be the bottleneck in terms of capabilities. We have not made an internal text-to-speech or speech-to-text model, so that's one of the aspects of this is out of our control. If someone is actively working on this type of thing, whether it's creating a data set, I know OpenAI said they're going to come out with a Japanese model. OpenInterpreter is a very large Japanese community, which has been awesome to engage with. But we want to make sure that we support initiatives to improve accessibility, but we're not actively building it. So if you know anyone doing it, send them my way. But it is something that we want to make sure everyone benefits from, rather than just like native English speakers with very easy to understand accents.
Awesome. So, you good?
I'm good.
All right. That was the last question. So, thank you so much.
Just quickly, we're trying something new tonight. So we're just gonna have all the organizers come up real quick to the front. I'll take a big selfie with Mike and everybody in the background. How's that sound, everybody?